I don't think that Gwen needs an introduction with this group. I think she's well known, and people certainly know. Some of you have known Gwen much longer than I have. So Ed and Scott, I appreciate y'all's feedback as well. Stole my thunder, some of the things I had planned to say, so I will say this. Really the first interaction that I had after kind of deciding that I wanted to join a Rotary was with Gwen at the initiation at Gwen's house. And while she may not have been the reason I decided to join, she certainly is a big part of why I decided to stick around. Very rarely have I met somebody with so much compassion. And quite frankly, I think it's a real blessing to get to hear her speak today, because in the time I've known her, she's been such a phenomenal listener. And with that, I was fortunate enough to attend a meeting of the Peace Committee and really found that it was such a great place for conversation, for people to share ideas, to, I don't want to say be wrong, but to know that there were no wrong answers. It was a great place to encourage discourse and personal growth, as well as growth within Rotary. So without further ado, Gwen, take it from me. Please let me shut up.
Thank you so much. Wow, I'm embarrassed. You know, I don't know how to be with that. Thank you so much, Graham. That's a beautiful introduction. You know, I would ask you all on this call to set aside what you think you already know about what peace is. You know, and to listen from an honest, open, what the hell is it anyway? Okay, I think I know this, and then, you know, so often, you know, what's that old saw about, you know, you can't fill a teacup if it's already full. You can't add to anything. So, I mean, I know I thought I knew what peace was until I got involved with the Peace Committee, which is what I think this is probably my third year, Scott. Yeah, I went to a leadership training, and I was so excited when they were going to have that big peace conference here. And so I said, Scott, I went up to Scott after, because he was leading the training on that. And I ended up being with Kenny Verner, a part of his subcommittee. And somehow or another, I've managed to still be involved in different aspects. And then so last year, I ended up chairing what I began to call a peace committee. And so the district has been kind enough to have it be one. And what it has become is pretty much what Graham saw when he came. It's an idea incubator. It's a place for people, whatever Rotary Club they're in, or even if they're not Rotarians, to get together and talk about what's possible. And, you know, I say that as Rotarians, the sky's the limit for us. And so what I want to do is take a little time right now to kind of I'm going to go ahead and share my screen if that's okay. Right, okay. Share. And I've got right now I'm going to put up my PowerPoint. And, okay. You see this? Can y'all all see this? The direct violence and the structural cultural violence. Can y'all see that graphic?
Yeah.
Okay. So I would assert that when we hear the word violence, we think about the kind of violence where somebody shoots each other, where a husband beats his wife, where two nations are at war. Does anybody else have any take on violence other than that? All right, no argument there, right? We call that, though, in the world of peace building, in the science of peace building, they've taken it apart, and they say that that is actually direct violence. Makes sense, right? If I hit you, that was pretty direct. If I shoot you, that's pretty direct. But then all underneath, and it's just like an iceberg, okay? But that direct violence is only the visible part of the iceberg of violence. Underneath it, there are the things that created that direct violence. And we as Rotarians have been dealing with a lot of these over the years. People get really so we've got the direct violence, and we've talked about that, but down below there's what we call structural violence and cultural violence. I think that as a woman, every woman here can probably understand what it's like. I don't know, when I was a young girl, I wanted to play the drums, and my daddy told me, don't be ridiculous, girls don't play the drums. Strangely enough, that's a form of structural violence. We have all these myths about races and gender and caste system or poor people. We have all these myths that we've grown up believing, and that they are self-perpetuating, you know, how things are supposed to be. And those myths lead us from cultural violence into actually creating laws that keep that in place. So this is kind of a different way to look at what you see is not necessarily all that's there to perceive. Any questions? And please let me know at any time if you have questions. Just unmute yourself, because I can only see, when I've got this up, I can only see 5 of y'all. All right, so I believe that as Rotarians, it's our primary job, the primary kind of violence that we need to deal with is the cultural violence, our belief, our isms that we inflict on each other. You know, we try really hard to stay away from politics in Rotary. And over here in the structural violence part, it's pretty hard to deal with that without getting into the politics. Any questions so far? Okay, here's some more examples of violence. We're going to continue to look at it. Why does that thing come down? Oh, it's something in the chat. Hello, somebody, wait a minute. Let me figure out how to do this. Somebody had, oh, hi, Mark. Okay, so I know we had a lot of hoopty-la recently, you know, with people trying to have peaceful marching, and other people coming in and looting and tearing down property. And you can clearly see there's a big difference, okay? Violence is violent. Violence is violence. But you can always have conflict. We're human beings. We always have conflict. So how to have these peaceful interactions without the violence, okay? That's what, in fact, that's what Monday night is partially going to be addressing. And that's what we as Rotarians want to try to have happen. So now that we've defined violence, let's talk about peace. Negative peace, that's kind of that, to me, that was an unusual thing. That didn't make sense to me for the longest time. But, you know, we always think that if countries are not at war, then they're at peace, right? But the truth of the matter is, there's other stuff going on. That structural violence that we saw that leads to the direct violence, which is war. So as long as things are quiet, we're having negative peace, but all that other stuff is going on under the surface. But what we in Rotary are trying to do is to create positive peace. That's which accounts for the conditions. We got to have conditions that are favorable to its emergence. We want to prevent conflicts that keep them from escalating into violence, by addressing the root causes of problems and then work them through with dialogue and negotiation. John Hugo said it well. I thought I liked this, so I put this on here. The concept of positive peace seems so simple, and yet it's actually quite revolutionary. For centuries, we've looked at peace as the absence of violence, without fully considering that other drivers are in play. Positive peace turns its definition on its head and lets us reframe the question. Instead of examining the causes of war, we can explore the attitudes, institutions, and structures that build a more peaceful society and work to create those conditions in vulnerable areas before conflict even occurs. Isn't that what we're doing as Rotarians? Don't we do that? You know? So here is what is known, oh, by the way, Rotary is partnered with the Institute for Economics and Peace. Has anybody heard of that place? Anybody that's saying anything, if you're muted, unmute, because I don't know. But the Institute for Economics and Peace says that there are these 8 pillars of peace, and Rotary agrees with them, that if all these pillars are in place, for instance, acceptance of the right of others is so key, I think. High levels of human capitals. You know, when we've got all these people that are not working, you know, what do we do with them? Equitable distribution of resources. Look, if you don't have that, then you're going to be mad at if you're a have-not, you're going to be mad at the haves. You know, this free flow of information, all of these, to have all these in place would be the ideal state for a community, Houston, a Rotary District, a country, the planet. That's where we're all trying to get to, that ideal state. How are we going to get there? Okay, well, this is what we've decided to do this year in Rotary, is to have events and activities that people can focus on to help move us toward that ideal state. The critical conversations one that we're having Monday night is just, it's so ideal. I think one of the things that we have to know, for instance, is what's the status now? What's the status now before we can ever look and see where do we want to get to? This Be Hope app, which I'm going to be demonstrating shortly, is another outgrowth of the Peace Committee. And that actually is working with the young children. Rotarians have created this app. I'm pretty pumped about that. One of the nice things about being the chair on this committee is I get to stick my nose in all the business of all the people that are doing projects in the committee. And it's okay. They can't say, Gwen, go away, because I'm the chair. But I just sometimes it's just like wonderful to be a fly on the wall and listen, like Graham was saying, to the conversations for possibility. That's how the Be Hope app was arrived at. Shortly after COVID started, Corinne Parker with Be the Peace, Be the Hope was on a peace committee call, and she was telling us how frustrated she was. They had worked so hard all year long over at Sugar Grove Academy and with other schools to teach the children about social emotional learning, to teach them how to manage their emotions, to help them learn to motivate themselves, to help them manage their time, all of these things. And boom, now all of a sudden there was no more. So the people on the call created this possibility of making an app. And it's pretty exciting. Other things that you can learn as a Rotarian and things that are that we're engaged in. If you're like, well, where do people get all these data and all of this? And what's this whole idea? Where did it get started? I encourage you to take a look at this location, visionofhumanity.org. Can you see it up there on the screen? I'll put it in the chat. Chat. Visionofhumanity.org. And I encourage you to go there. All right. You can go there and you can learn a lot about the science of peace building. Also, we have the Rotary Positive Peace Academy. That's rotarypositivepeace.org. I'll put that up there too. You can take a course, a little short course that you do it totally online and become a certified peace builder through there. And then, of course, anybody can contact me if they have, if they want to know more or have questions. Now, what I'm going to do, let's see how to do this. I want to, oh, let's see, I know. Okay. Now, anybody have any questions about anything that I just said or that you saw? I see you. This is not television. This is participative stuff. Yes, sir, Mr. Harrington.
I just want to ask, could you give us a sense? I'll start by making a comment. My take is that if you go back 25, 30 years ago, when people were talking about having a United States Department of Peace, I found it to be a bit too Pollyannish at the time. And yet, in the last 10 to 15 years, and I think it has to do with the ability to communicate internationally now, there's been a tremendous growth of it. Can you give us a sense of how things have grown over the last 5 or 10 years? Just your take on that?
I think that in many places in the world, not just here, and I've seen it, I've seen it I love to be able to just go anywhere with a Zoom call now. I could do a peace thing every day of the week. I could go to somebody's, whether they're in Uganda, for instance. I'm in touch with a Rotarian in Uganda that has a school for orphan children. And when COVID struck, they were starving and in rags. And he and I were back and forth on, well, what could he do? And I said, well, have you reached out? Have you, started a GoFundMe app and stuff like that? Just in the conversation of it, as we are able to talk more and more to each other, these things start to show up as positive results. I don't know what to say. About that. I think that if you were to sit and look at peace building projects in the world, just Google it, you'll find that it is. I was oblivious to it 15 years ago, Mark. I just, how it occurs for me is like, yeah, it's a rolling wave. Climate, the whole Rotary just recently added environmental focus as one of the new areas of focus. And we are in our district here. Our district is working on a peace building project in that arena that Dakota is heading. I don't know if that answered your question, but it might have given you something to look.
Gwen could offer a thought real quick on that?
Please, Scott. Yeah.
So, Mark, I think to me, one of the things that what we tried to do here with this peace committee and with like the critical conversations is determine where our endpoint was going to be. And then we backfilled on how we're going to get there, because so often I think what happens with these, so to speak, Pollyanna type peace initiatives, it's a lot of people that want to get together and go away and they feel real good after they left there, but nothing happens. And that's what we're trying to do is to come up with actual action items that will then be implemented and be sustainable to continue the efforts that we're putting in right now. And to me, that's a big difference, is rather than being somewhat bureaucratic, but let's be boots on the ground and let's bring people together to actually cause an effect that will change lives and change the situation, rather than just talk about it.
I have a sense.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Wayne.
And kind of from the perspective that you said, remember here that I guess in one sense, all us old hippies, we're finally making a difference, right? It's like, you know, those ideas and concepts that we embraced so long ago now when we were kids, and now we've grown up, you know, and now we are the movers and shakers of the world. And this conversation that started way back when is slowly spreading, and we're beginning to see the results of that as more and more people take it on, and as we create ever finer distinctions about what peace means or what violence is. It's like, well, it's like when Gwen started off, right? And she talked about the different types of violence, you know, and before I got involved with this, I hadn't ever really thought about that. Violence was when somebody did something physically to somebody else, or, you know, or something like that happened. You know, and the same thing for peace. And the idea, you know, peace was, like she said, the absence of war. But what about, you know, actually taking peace, instead of it being a default, that it actually be a creation? And I think that what we're seeing now, though, is that conversation, that idea of this is an idea whose time has come. This is the time when we start looking for what we have in common with each other. That's an organization, God, it's been 40 years ago, probably now, close, called Search for Common Ground. That all too often we look at our differences as opposed to looking at our sameness. And the truth is, we have far more alike than we are different. So for me, it's just, I see it as part of our evolution of humanity. And I think that, as you noted, this ability for communication today, with like what we're doing today with Zoom, that in the face of not being able to get together, we're still able to get together. And that has really facilitated that, as establishing links around the world. My 2 cents.
Yeah, my take is, and again, this is just my take on it, is I think now that we're far enough away from the Cold War, and you think of how awful the 20th century was with World War I, World War II, and just continuous armed conflict, that now that's not all over the world, but we're in much better shape now. And so there isn't the Western freedom against, you know, an aggressive communism. That is gone now. I think for maybe the next generation, they may look back and kind of shake their head and said, did the communists really think they were going to conquer the whole world? And even now, I think among Americans, you know, we would have loved to have really made huge strides in Iraq and Afghanistan, but there's more of a tempered sense that maybe the government can't really make that kind of progress. But what can is people getting together through institutions like the peace process and all of that. And the growth of e-commerce and internet everything, I think that's one of the great processes, the generators of hopefully an ongoing peace.
Thank you, Mark. I mean, that kind of broke it open. What I want to do now is show you something, is show you that app, because think about it. If you take a bottom-up approach and a top-down approach, and then you're going to get closer sooner. So with this conversation, with the critical conversations, that's a top-down approach. So I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to just give you all just a little taste of the Be Hope app. So let's see. Make it bigger. So when you go to the Be Hope app, you can download it. Go b-hope.glide.app.io. I'll put this in the chat. And at some point. So you go there and you get a welcome. You can click on any of these things and it's going to take you to a lot of stuff. But I wanted to just play you just a little part of the welcome first.
Have you ever heard of social and emotional learning? Everybody's talking about it these days. But what is it? Social and emotional learning, or SEL as it's more commonly known, helps you understand who you are, your strengths, your limitations, and why you behave the way that you do.
Can everybody hear that? Can y'all hear it? Okay, good.
which is known as self-awareness. SEL also teaches you how to manage your thoughts and emotions so that you are more in control and motivate yourself to achieve your goals. You can also learn how to better understand others from diverse backgrounds so you can have better relationships and identify support, which is social awareness. SEL is also important in relationships because you can learn how to communicate clearly, listen actively, cooperate, negotiate conflict positively, and seek and offer help when needed. You can also learn how to make positive choices about personal behavior and social interactions by evaluating the consequences.
All right. Let's see. Let me see if I can get us back over to the app. So there's a lot more to that welcome. I'm not going to play it because we have a limited amount of time. But say you are a student at Lee High School or Sugar Grove Academy or Humboldt High School or whatever, and you are working at home on your schoolwork, and you're like, oh my God, I'm so bleh. Maybe your mother had to go to work and you're at home by yourself, or maybe you live in an apartment with 10 other people and there's only 2 or 3 rooms, but you still have your little laptop that the school gave you and you have to do your homework. What do you do? How do you motivate yourself? How do you manage your time? So I'm going to go on the self-motivation one. So all of the apps start with a query for the students to take part in. So like, so here's Fatima. She feels like she always has a lot of chores to do. She doesn't want to, she's overwhelmed, the chores are pile up. So you're a kid and you're looking at this and you go, well, I think she ought to tell her parents not to give her so many chores. So you can select that. Then you can go over here to see what results people did. Then you can go and see how, I guess it's Fatima or Fatima, I don't know.
There's no way I can get all this done. I have this assignment and this test to study for. Another assignment, another test. It's too much. Why even bother trying to get it done? I'm just going to call Allie. Hey, Allie.
Hey, what's up? You sound upset.
I literally have this mountain of work in front of me and zero motivation.
I can relate.
I don't know what to do about it. I can't ignore it, and the pile just seems to be getting bigger. And I really don't want to get behind in all my classes.
I hear you, but don't worry. You got this.
Really? How?
Have you thought about just breaking down what you have to do in small chunks? Helps me focus whenever I have lots of work to do. I feel like I can actually accomplish something.
Yeah, I should probably do that. I want to keep talking with you, but I have this assignment due today, and I really need to get it done.
Well, just focus on getting that one assignment done. I mean, you shouldn't worry about any other work you have until it's done. You can totally do that. And you know what? When you're done, we can stop talking about school and only talk about fun stuff. That'll be your reward.
It actually gives me something to look forward to. Okay, Allie, I'll talk to you later.
See you soon.
You're on mute, Gwen.
Look, sorry. In the app, you can see that there's more that can be done. They can click on learn more about self-motivation, where that will take them, oh, that's not a good one. Let's try this one. Yeah, click here to see how Jen is doing. We don't want to do that. So there's lots of tools, but as you see, the app is not quite finished yet. So this app was created by Rotarians on with Dakota Stormer was part of this work. It was on an app that he invited us, that he introduced everybody to. And so there's, let me write this. So there's activities, there's posts, people can post images. There are workshops that they can go to. So like, again, you're home and you want to treat yourself and you can go, oh, I'm going to go to the African dance workout that they had. That was pretty cool. Let me try that. And because the links take people to different places. So you could do a workout. So I have said that we grown-up Rotarians, we need something like this. We need something like this. Something in our pocket that when so-and-so just got on my last nerve and I'm ready to throw him out the door, I could say, wait a minute, let me whip out my phone and go in the bathroom and do one of the activities that allows me to get out of my own way so that I can achieve what the two of us were trying to do. So these are only two of the projects that we've been at work on. How projects get started in the Peace Committee is just through networking and through idea sharing. We have a monthly Peace Committee meeting, and I would be thrilled to add anybody to the list that would like to attend, like just as Graham did. And or if you're like, you have an idea that you want to bring to the Peace Committee. Here in our club, James Brown had an idea for doing some microfinance work, and so we pulled in him and Amarillo, who is a peace scholar, a Rotary Peace Scholar, and has a nonprofit that works in these areas. And then Jorge, we got Ricardo Barnes in on it, and Jorge's colleague there at West Houston Outreach, Stephanie Ruzak, and we worked up a proposition. When we took it to the board, we became aware that there was a gap of knowledge between, again, going back to the beginning of the conversation, like if you think you already know what something is, then you cannot hear what people are telling you because that's so loud in your ear. So one of the things about building peace, I think they even talked about it in one of the little videos there, was listening. So we decided to shelve that microfinance program, and who knows, maybe we'll get back to it over time. But right now we're just talking about building peace. That's what we're doing. It's 12:56, so I guess I should shut up now unless anybody has a burning question.
I'd like to make a comment, Gwen. I think this concept of structural violence and environmental justice is very timely. And I think that if we took the four-way test seriously, these would be priorities. And I think it has very little to do with partisan politics if we did take the four-way test seriously. And I'll give you an example. So we have an issue in 3rd Ward where on one city corner, you have a city-owned vacant lot that hasn't been mowed or abated in years. It's full of tires and rebar and broken glass in an area that has not a single public park for children to play in the shadow of a huge development. Okay, so it has nothing to do with politics. You have a Democrat-controlled city-owned lot and you have a big capitalistic development. Neither of these entities are treating the community with fairness, with truth, considering goodwill or benefits. And so, you could bring in some volunteers and you could mow the grass. And with the residents in the shadow of the development complex, they're dealing with issues of the street not being blocked off, porta potties in the middle of an active street, their cement steps have been run over, their fences have been torn down, totally things that you wouldn't find in other neighborhoods in Houston happening. So, you could mow the grass on the city lot and you could do a bake sale for the residents. That's negative peace. That's peace without justice. As Rotarians, I think we need to get at the root of what's causing issues like this to happen. Why are certain neighborhoods not following rules and fairness and not being treated with truth? So I think that we as Rotarians need to look deeper into issues and look at the core of what's happening.
That's great, Ed. And what you're pointing to again is the cultural violence, the belief systems that have become cemented into our society that the things we grew up being told by our parents, the way that the history books were presented to us in school, you know, it seems like every 20 or 40 years somebody wants to rewrite the history. So there's a lot of this is a fertile field and plenty of room for disagreement. By the way, we're human beings. Conflict is a part of the condition of being human. One of the things I've learned in the peace building atmosphere is there's nothing wrong with conflict. Nothing wrong with conflict. It's the violence that we want to address. Bill, thank you so much. Thank you, my friends.
Thank you, Gwen, and thank you for all you're doing for our club and also District 58, 90, and Rotary everywhere.